Hello everyone and welcome to this Exchange webinar. The title of this exchange is Jisc 1 Engaging Users. This Exchange webinar is part of a series of 5 and more will be explained at the end. It will last approximately 30 to 45 minutes of content and then there will be opportunity for questions at the end. Thank you for registering, and also thank you to Rob Bristow from Jisc, Richard Bull from Montfort University and Elise Smithson from Coventry University. My name is Emma and I'm the Member Events and Communities Officer here at the EAUC. As you know, the EAUC delivered a Sustainability Exchange, which was initially a funded project from HEFCE and led by Staffordshire University. So, what are exchanges? Exchanges are free lunchtime webinars on a range of sustainability topics. Anyone can present them. Just get in touch with us at sustainabilityexchange@eauc.org.uk or myself. Okay, so just a little bit of housekeeping to go over now. I hope that everyone can hear okay. I have muted you all just to avoid background noise so that you can hear as clearly as possible. If you have any issues hearing at any point during this exchange, please could you use the chat box to send me a message saying so. Hopefully most of you have working microphones. Don't worry if you don't, as you'll have a chance to ask any questions at the end by typing them into the chat box and I will read them aloud. If you would like to speak your question aloud, then just send me a message and I'll unmute you. The webinar is being recorded so that you can view it again or share it with colleagues. It will be made available on the Sustainability Exchange with the presentation and any other resources a few hours after this exchange has ended. You will also be sent a short survey to gain your feedback. Please take the time to complete this because it helps both us and you. Okay, that's all from me now, and thanks to our speakers, and I'm going to pass you over to Rob Bristow from Jisc.
Good morning, everybody. I think we have also some colleagues joining us from across the North Sea, I think from Holland and other places, so it's nice to see you guys here. As Emma said, this is the first in a series of webinars that Jisc is promoting in association with the Sustainability Exchange. We're doing this in association to, in a way, also promote a series of guides that we're publishing, Jisc is publishing, on some of the key outputs and learnings from the Greening ICT program that we've been working on for the last few years. At the end of the webinar, there's my presentation, there's a table with some links to the 2 guides that have already been published, and the other 2 are in preparation. Other 3 are in preparation, will be published around the time that the webinars are published. So I'll speak for a little while and explain a bit about, for those of you who don't know maybe don't know what Jisc is and have not been in on the Greening ICT program as the 3 speakers have for many years. Just explain a bit about what we're trying to do there. Give you just some, I think, pull out some of the key bullet points from the guide, and then I'll turn over to Richard Bull and then Elise to talk about the work they've done in their respective institutions. So, what is Jisc? Those of you who work in UK higher education or further education probably don't need me to tell you this, but I think it's always worth repeating it on some level, partly because Jisc has been through a lot of changes recently. We used to be a committee, a joint committee, hence the J, funded by the UK funding bodies. We're now an independent charity, and that change happened at the end of last year, and we run a number of things, although it's funny, whenever I go anywhere, the only thing people have ever heard about is the Jisc mail mailing list. But that's only about sort of 0.1% of what we do, I suppose. So our claim is to be the UK's expert on physical technology for education and research. And I think champion is a good word there. It's driving uptake, getting people talking to one another, picking up on best practice. Among the offerings that we have is the GENIC network. Those of you sitting in a UK institution of learning will be almost certainly connecting via the GENIC network. 19 million users and counting, and lightning quick. It's not your average broadband, as they say. And on top of that, a whole bunch of associated network services. There's a whole list of the things we offer. I went to it the other night. I was quite amazed. Some things I'd never even heard of. Also, access to scholarly resources. Estimated over £75 million savings per year to the tertiary education sector. A whole slew of advice and guidance on teaching and learning, research support for research, and the back office, which is really where this work, I suppose, sits. So this is about administration, enterprise, making the organisation more efficient, more sustainable, so that it, in support of those key tasks. And I think the main thing for me, one of the things that's makes working for Jisc a real pleasure is the opportunity to provide some leadership and bringing of people together. And I think one of the sort of rich things we've managed to do is to forge these networks of people working together. So that's Jisc, and that's where we're coming from. We set out on a journey on green IT some years ago when we had more capital letters than we do now. For those of you who've been around, you'll know what that means. And it's been an interesting journey. We started with a broad study, the socio-IT study, which produced very useful tools and guides, and a whole raft of case studies and guides and briefing papers and stuff. And then we've been running some innovation projects in institutions, which the Montfort and Coventry are just two of them. Looking to reduce both the environmental impacts of ICT, but also the use of ICT to deal with the other 90-something% of emissions, which don't have anything to do with IT, but where ICT can have the ability to change things. And so it's coming to an end in a formal sense, but there's still a lot of richness to share, and that's really what these webinars are about. So I think going on to the guide, I think it's worth, what I actually will do very quickly is, get back to the right place, and I'll actually post the link to the guide into the chat window so that those of you who want to get hold of it can do so. So it's there in the chat window. The fundamental thesis behind this, the reason I wanted to do a guide and push out information about this area was because too many places I've seen, oh, we'll build a dashboard, we'll put it on the wall, and oh, we'll show people, look, using this much energy. That A is not enough and B is not helpful, I think. We've got to get people involved. People come to work, they don't, maybe they're being good and saving energy and doing stuff at home, but they don't really see how very often in their work they can change it. For instance, in the offices we're working in now, I think the only thing I have direct control over is the desk light, and that's got a low energy bulb in it. So I don't see there's a lot I can do to change things. So it's really a question, and this is what Richard and Louise will be helping to explain, is some of the approaches for helping people to get engaged. And that seems to be, from the work we've done, that seems to be the crucial thing. Get people engaged, get them involved, get communities going, and make it fun. So motivate your users, find out what makes them tick. Finding energy champions, Coventry University's work did that, and also some work we did at Lincoln, University of Lincoln as well. Sort of showed that importance of finding the right people to take this onto the ground. Look at financial incentives. It can be a very powerful lever. Even small incentives can sometimes make a real difference. And there's a future webinar on reducing energy costs, which will look in more detail at incentive schemes that have been run in different institutions. And, you know, you don't have to give or take away much money for people to start to show an interest. Is what we're saying. Get senior management engagement. I think if sorry, that's my phone ringing. I'll just turn that off. Sorry about that. I think Richard's got an example of a VC getting very excited about an energy saving initiative. That's the sort of thing you want. If you can get that sort of engagement, then you'll be doing really well. I think another bit of learning that came out of the program was the real need, if you want to run an initiative like this, if you're not from the States, is to get friendly with the estates people. And as one of the projects we had said, learn to speak electrician, and you know, because you'll need to be able to talk the language of these people when you're looking at metering and all the rest of the things that you need to do. So energy dashboard's not the panacea some have thought, and you know, I think most of us are probably aware that that sort of first scenario. But the important thing is dashboards have their uses, but really as a part of a community building and engagement exercises. They need to be simple and direct. People need to be able to see something as they walk by. They're not going to stop and try and puzzle it out in the lobby. And this gamification, which I'm not actually sure is a word, but never mind. Gamification approach is making it fun, and I think both Richard and Elise will talk a bit about gaming approaches and sort of fun things, making energy reduction fun. As well as the Montfort and Coventry work, project at the University of Oxford, Open to Change, recommend that link to you. It's a useful their sort of report and thinking around the things is definitely worth reading. And as I say, the Green View project will be discussed later. Other levers, show if your initiative is making a difference and you're starting to save energy, then I think it's really important to show people where the benefits are going, and maybe building up some sort of social fund or something to do things which perhaps otherwise wouldn't get done, refurbish a common room, or you know, a new coffee machine, or you know, something like that. So give people a kind of sense that they're getting something back from this. You need just to keep going. You need to raise awareness, run education programs, keep talking to the users, keep getting ideas back from them, and also, you know, you're working in organisations which are hopefully full of smart people. There's bound to be people in some of the academic departments. I've named a few there, but you know, also the sort of geographers and the people interested in climate change and the rest of it, who you know could well be recruited into your initiative and give you both practical help and enthusiastic people, but also a kind of good theoretical grounding in what you're doing. So don't neglect your colleagues, I think. And a final thoughts on dashboards. I think this came from the another dashboard project at the University of Central Lancashire, and I think it says it all. You know, it is worth doing, but it's in their case they were coming from the state side, so they actually said you now need to go make friends with the people in IT services. So I think that reinforces the point that you can't do this on your own. The states can't do this on their own. IT can't do this on their own. You know, an academic department can't really do this on their own. You need to get all the people together and working together, and that can sometimes be just an immensely useful exercise in itself. Anyway, that's my kind of initial thought, sort of agenda setting on this. I'll just say, sort of move on to the introduction to, we're first going to hear from Dr. Richard Bull, who's Principal Lecturer and Subject Group Leader in the Institute of Energy and Sustainable Development at Montfort. And Richard's led a couple of really interesting projects with Jisc and I think he'll say a bit about where that work's moved on to into the wider context, which is always nice to see. And then we'll hear from Elise Smithson, who's Deputy Director of the Low Impact Building Centre at Coventry University, and leads a major part of the customer project, the student residence and energy resources thing. So that's me done for now. Emma, do I need to hand? No, you've already handed the ball over, so I think I'll hand over to Richard then.
Thank you very much, Rob. I now have the ball, I believe, which is good news. An excellent introduction by Rob, I think, and certainly I'll be able to go into some of the detail and just pick up on some of those findings. My intention is just to go for 10 minutes, so I'll go fairly quickly through a couple of the projects that I've worked on and that Rob alluded to there. Two JISC-funded projects into the green ICT projects, the funding stream, a project called Dual and a project called Green. And also, just to really echo that point, I think that Rob made about the need for interdisciplinary approach, and certainly one of the successes that we've had at Montfort University is having the research and academic teams working with estates and different departments. Right, so let me start off by just exploring just a couple, very briefly, some of the underlying concepts and themes from an academic perspective as to why we've got into this world of energy and trying to make energy visible, and the need to reconnect people to the environmental impacts of their activities, and particularly around energy behaviours and the built environment, light switches, computers, trying to make some sense of the fact that all these little activities that we're doing are having an environmental impact, even though they're often invisible. This lovely quote by Burgess and Nye here, that energy is an abstract and invisible force, commonly conceptualized in many different ways. Of course, most people don't feel that they use energy. They switch on lights and warm their homes, and they're disconnected from the reality of the power station and the coal plant and the ground and so on. And yet, so you've got this very complex idea of what energy actually is, and many of the normal ways that we try and visualize them or engage building users over the last few years, certainly in public buildings, is around display energy certificates. That's it. And there's an example of one there, and you can see that it's quite complex. There is this relatively simple A to G rating that you recognize from white goods, but not the most visually appealing. And I think we were keen to explore something a bit more engaging. There's some other just references and concepts there that I'll leave you to follow up in the future. A need for a different approach, recognizing more the complexity of people's perceptions, bottom-up and top-down approach, and particularly this value of public engagement involving people, and of the importance of context. And we'll certainly revisit that when we look at one of our projects. So the two particular projects that we had that were funded through Jisc, first of all, we had Dual, which ran for 12 months, which was looking at reducing energy consumption through an IT interface dashboard type tool in the Queen's building in Montfort, where the Faculty of Technology are based, and that's an interesting point that we'll revisit. And then at the end of that project, we've got so far, and we were very fortunate that there was a second round of greening ICT funding, and we've got further funding to develop Dual into Greenview, which is much more about an iPhone app that people could use across the campus. So moving from a single building to a slightly wider campus approach. So let me tell you a little bit about Dual. First of all, this was the first project we ran with Jisc. We started off in the Queen's building and engineering faculty. We had half-hourly sub-metering for the whole building, but we installed some sub-metering in 3 specific areas. We then started off with trying to understand how much ICT impact has on the overall consumption of the building. So you can see in figure 1 there, you can see the red line showing the baseline of energy consumption and the peaks and sort of the daily peaks and troughs, and then you can see the weekend switch off on the right. We managed to get a 20% reduction just by switching off all the computers and lights over that weekend. So we started to see first off that this is really something we're tackling. Then, before we started to design anything, we wanted to engage people, so we got some small user groups of building users together around a table, and really to get them, seeing that there's an environmental impact of the ICT consumption. So secondly, what would they like to see on the dashboard? And they came up with some ideas about wanting to see comparative usage over the previous weeks and across different departments, and seeing cost as well as CO2 and kilowatt hours and so on. So the project ran on. We had 12 months. We ran out of time. We managed at the end to pay a small amount of money to get some designers to build this primitive widgets that you'll see on the right. These were done with Yahoo widgets, and they were fairly primitive, very limited functionality. The key issue being, really, there was no way of measuring attendance in the areas that we were looking at. So it was very difficult to attribute any information, provision, or impact of the dashboards on energy consumption, because we had no idea whether it's simply the fact that people were off that week and that's why consumption reduced. And also we were slightly frustrated that we ended up with a relatively quantitative and linear approach to visualization. We had ambitions for something a bit more creative and a bit more fun that engaged the non-technical audience, which was certainly my background. I had a hatred really of charts and graphs and figures and numbers, and we were looking for something a bit more engaging. So we managed to secure a further round of funding to work on the Greenview project. And this had a particular goal to look at an iPhone app. So to take the dashboard style work we've done and to do something much more creative. Campus-based, we managed to take 5 buildings across the university, and we started to do some creative visualization. So you can see there the 2 challenges we wanted to address. Creative visualization, so how can we present the information in a more interesting way, but crucially to make sure that there was real, live, important information that we could present. So it wasn't enough just to present some nice pictures and fun animations. There needed to be some depth and substance behind what we were doing. So I just talked briefly about the creative visualization. Here's a screenshot of 3 stages. So what we essentially had, we built an iPhone app where you saw a map of the campus represented by the 5 images there and the previous slide. You can see the Hugh Aston building on the left and the green and white building with the black eyes. And then you could click into the app and you could see the building, and you would see the energy consumption in 3 stages, either happy, which is the left stage of the screenshot, the middle screenshot there is normal consumption, and the right is unhappy. And I'm going to unpack what we mean by that in a second. And we had this narrative of endangered animals that were hidden amongst the campuses, and the motivation was to reduce energy consumption, and then the animals would be happier in their habitats. And each stage of saving triggered a different animation. So that was the fun part. But as I said, we wanted to make sure that those stages, the happy, sad, and normal, actually meant something, that there was some proper data going on behind. So depending on how technical you are, I just want to take you through 2 quick slides to try and explain what was going on there. All the buildings and the campus had half-hourly meter readings. So we were able to take that data and track the annual data and start to come up with, first of all, a normal pattern of consumption. So you can see there a weekly pattern of consumption showing the daily peaks and troughs. You can see that we've then been able to create a normal profile, which meant that from that we could create a 25% over normal, which would be the unhappy, the red zone, 25% under, which meant that there was a happy state. We were actually saving money. Consumption is 25% less than previous, or then there's a normal state. And you're comparing each building with itself over previous consumption. So it's always learning from itself. This is a dynamic process whereby as the building slowly improves, the normal patterns also change. So it's a real-life dynamic consumption pattern that actually means something. And it meant that during the course of the day with the animations, they were actually changing based on the time of day and attendance and weather patterns and so on. So just to quickly reflect on some lessons learned here. First of all, in terms of the practicalities of engaging users, certainly with the Jewel project where we set out to have people on board, to get people out at lunchtimes and meet people, it was actually very difficult. You know, it would be no surprise that in the academic context, as in many organizations, people are very busy, and we found it very difficult to get people to have face-to-face meetings. Food obviously helps, and also personal context, not relying, you know, something as simple as not relying on sending out emails, but face-to-face, hard-won relationships, and people are much more likely to come out if they know you and they've got on with you and they see that you're interested in them. And then we try to do some online engagement around wikis and engaging people online with content, and we found that near impossible. So we moved on from that quite quickly. Evaluation also very difficult to do really in terms of attributing behaviour change to these kinds of interventions. Very difficult in picking up small changes and measuring occupancy and so on. But there we also knew that without the sincere commitment and senior staff engagement, the mere information provision, as what we alluded to at the beginning, is very limited. Just putting up information in and of itself is not going to make much of a difference. However, when we look at the final learning area, creative but not too creative, certainly within the Faculty of Technology and dealing with engineers, we found that we almost went a bit too far with some of the creativity. Some of the more technical people actually didn't like the animations, found them a bit childish, and you know, we don't do fun, we're engineers, just give us the facts. And we found that it was important still to have that technical information underpinning the data, and so there was a layer that people could go to within the apps of accessing the more detailed information. And hence people do still need the information. It's important that that's there. And finally, we found that people inherently want to compete. We actually, on one of the opening slides for the app, it showed you the 5 buildings and how they were doing next to one another. And we found that people really liked that and wanted to see how they were comparing. So to conclude then there, the lessons, I just want to briefly just put up some links as to where we're going from there. The Greenview project is finished. The methodology from that has now gone on to a project called Smart Spaces. So we're trialing out some different presentations and simplified dashboards, but the underpinning methodology for quantifying energy data is living on in the Smart Spaces project. So there's some links there. We've also got an EPSRC project now for Good Deeds, looking at the social media aspects and participation potential of smartphone engagement. And we're also going to be working with the NUS on looking at competitions and energy dashboards. So I've gone through things quite quickly. Most of the pieces of work that we've done, we've managed to get published as conference papers or journal papers. The links are all there. I have all of the PDFs on my computer, so if anyone wants to email me, I can send them the PDFs of the specific papers if they want to do that. So there's my contact details and links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll be really happy to take questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. It's Celine. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm interested in that my role is a dual role. I actually work 50% of the time in estates and 50% of my time with the Faculty of Engineering and Computing in a research group about low-impact buildings. So I kind of get to see quite a few people and also have the opportunity to engage quite a few members of staff across the campus. Just a quick slide to show you that this was an 18-month project, 2010 to 2012. But as we get to the end of the presentation, it very much still lives with us now and is now part of the way we're doing things, or some of the social media aspects are. So customer, as Robert sort of explained at the beginning, quite a clumsy title we decided when we first started to try and get students involved. So the very first thing we did, and you can see the collaborators in this project at the bottom, was ask the students, how do we talk to students so that they actually understand something on their level rather than, hey, here's a research project. And the result was, with student designs and marketing teams, Green at CU, which is now a brand that we use at the university for all sorts of things to do with estates and students' union. And we also have a Facebook page, which during this project we launched, and we still live with it. And last year's target was 500 fans, and we've exceeded that, and this year's target is 800 fans. And how we recruit those, I'll mention that during the following slides. You can see that I've named some of the formal parts of the university, but the key element of this project is we engaged students directly onto the project, 6 students who we recruited, and we actually paid salaries to in order to help us go out, talk directly student to student, go around the campus, go around accommodation, populate the Facebook site, and also run competitions for us. And as Rob mentioned at the very beginning, the prizes and incentives were very small. They were sweets, they were lanyards, souvenirs with Coventry University, just pens, for instance. Students seem to like those. And when we really wanted to up the stakes, we got a pizza party going, and we got 50 students coming along to test a game that I'm going to show you later, and all for a slice of pizza each. A serious game is a game that is developed for educational purposes. That doesn't mean they're serious. They can be fun, and they should be fun. The aim is that an individual user will walk through a virtual world of whatever the scenario is. And the Institute at Coventry has worked with disaster planning people, educational groups, so you can replicate buildings on fire or war zones or educational teaching classes, and in a sense it gives the user of the game some kind of method into experiencing it in the virtual world, and then understanding how to apply it in the real world. Those are just pictures to show you we were running this exercise in 4 different types of accommodation. And the project essentially was, in term 1, let's get a dashboard going, because dashboards are fairly familiar. But in term 2, we were going to launch the game, and in term 3, have a look at how we can revise that game. The picture you see there is a snapshot of what students would see when they log in their accommodation, when they log into their Wi-Fi access. This was part of the setup screens. Again, meters, dashboards, we probably encountered as many issues as everybody else when it comes to installing meters. And one of the key learning points of this project is definitely involve your estates team and your ITS team, and always anticipate that it will take longer than you think to get meters working, giving you reliable data in a format that you understand, even if the people helping you have installed meters before. So we were collecting data. We were sharing some of that with students, not in the form of the dashboard you see in front of you, because we were trying to move away from that. The students we met with on a bi-weekly basis were very clear. We're not interested in kilowatt hours particularly, not that interested in carbon, and we do think we know how to control energy. If it's too warm in the room, we open the window. We do know how the radiator works, but that doesn't matter, we'll just open the window. So this data was to help us really to try to get a competition going as the project developed. The key part of trying to bring all our students together is this Green at CU Facebook page, and that's a very early snapshot. And the image on the right is to show you that we stopped talking about switch things off, have you thought about doing this, close your curtains, and we turned it around and said to students, these are the kind of messages we boring estate facilities people need to get across. how would you try and encourage other people to do it? And so we ran campaigns that the students decided upon, and they decided the prizes for them. So there's campaigns such as it's Wear a Woolly Jumper Week. Send in your best photos of you and your colleagues in your residences of wearing a jumper. This week it's host a party and cook shared meals instead of single meals. Send us your best recipes. All sorts of ways to try and get people involved that didn't necessarily come across as an entirely energy-driven message. StudentCom was our external partner who provided and still provides the student portal through accommodation into the internet. And they cooperated, they installed the meters and they helped us advertise on their front pages to students what was going on. So with their help, we were sort of engaging students from the very beginning of the project, and as soon as the data became available. The current snapshot is a picture of the game, the serious game that we developed that we do in term 2. And I'll come back to some of the feedback on that as I go through. The image here is one of our halls of residence, single hall. It's a virtual room, and I can't show you through this static picture, but essentially the user of the app, it was an app that we made available on Android and Mac formats. The user could navigate themselves through the room, so they could get to the kitchen, the bathroom, see taps, see radiators, open windows, anything you can imagine. Turn the radio on in that picture, turn the laptop off. They could navigate through their room, and essentially the game's idea was how much energy can you save, or how much energy do you use by opening and closing things and seeing sort of actions at the same time. So if you turn the radiator on and open the window, you're going to use a lot more energy than if you turn the radiator off and then open the window. We had some sort of visualization for the students. It was very much the game. The game is a one-player game, so in this instance, we were just trying to give them some sort of feeling like some of the games you might find on the high street. And we also operated leaderboards. As you can see, quite a lot of the students decided to remain anonymous. But what was really quite intriguing was the game. The slide in front of you shows that from November to February, that was our dashboard process and some social media contact. From February onwards and the game launch, we didn't run a campaign called an energy campaign as such. What we ran was lots of communication through Green at CU. And what you're looking at there, and apologies for the lack of sort of properly defined axes, but that's the energy consumption across the different accommodation types. And without us talking about energy, during the period of promoting the game and getting the game played and getting feedback about the game, there was a definite signal that energy reduction was reducing. This is all weather corrected data. There's one or two where it's not so significant, but generally the picture shows there is a signal that is related to people just being made more aware of things they can do, really, rather than messages we're expecting them to absorb. So this is my key slide, I suppose. Meters, they're expensive. In a hall of residence, we basically metered 8 properties to do this project because we could meter every property, every flat. This is hundreds and hundreds of meters and hundreds of thousands of pounds. So we essentially spent 20k on meters, £20,000 on meters in a few properties to try and show us what was going on. Then the rest of it is moving away from meters and dashboards and into the game. And with regards to the game, we were a bit nervous. You could see from the images yourself, it's not as sophisticated as Angry Birds or Call of Duty. But it was a game that we wanted to try out. 50 students came along to a pizza party and played the game, gave us quite serious feedback. And what was very refreshing was the students were very keen on the fact that it could understand what the game was trying to achieve and where we could go with the game. So funding was limited, but examples of where the games can go, and it follows a little of what Richard said and what Coventry University will be doing in the future with the research councils, is making these games multi-platform, multi-user, across communities, setting up competitions. But the good news was the students saw the point and actually learned quite a bit about what they hadn't realised. The feedback at the very beginning of the project with students was, yes, we know how to reduce energy, we do understand these issues to do with the planet. But when we actually tested this out with focus groups and then the game, actually they weren't as well aware of the very small things they could do as they thought they were. The next learning point, if you are going to involve students in your project, is they are adults and they might not be at work, but their courses, their studies, that is a full-time job for them. So our attendance, we didn't start with 6 students, we ended up with 4. We were asking them to come along every couple of weeks, and actually we held their attention quite well, but it was quite a learning curve because they had to get used to how a university or a business or professionals work, and sometimes we were frustratingly slow for them. But having said that, throughout the year, by the end of the year, they've all got this on their CV, and they're very happy to now realise the way we work. And the legacy, a wider legacy from this is this is the first time we've used students in the estates team, and now we're sort of falling all over ourselves. The health and safety people, design team, maintenance team, getting students out there, surveying, getting information, bringing it back. We asked the students to go to one of our hall of residences to just basically check lights and whether the infrared timers and timings on those lights were working. But she came back with sheets and sheets of paper with phrases like, "Oh my God, did you know there's a really loud noise in this kitchen and I don't know what it is?" And so we came back with real texture to the data that showed that there was a fan that wasn't working in that room. And getting students involved was just refreshing for everybody in estates, gave them a bit of an impetus as to why we're actually running these projects with our students. Staff, again, I can't say this is easy, but working across teams, academic services, Students' Union, both the permanent members of staff and the annually changing executive structures, it's hard work, and people come and go and drop out of your project and join your project just because that's the way of the world. So there are a few really well engaged people, and those are the ones that keep the project going whilst some members of the staff come and go. So on legacy, as I mentioned, we've kept our Green at CU logos, we've kept our Facebook page, we recruit students. We're still recruiting one of the students that helped with the Jisc project. She's now doing a master's here, so we've managed to keep her involvement with estates now for 3 years. We've just recruited some more, and they'll be doing a similar thing. They're out there, they ask us for sweets and pens and laptops, and they go out and organise for themselves with the faculties, the library, the accommodation team, where it is they'll turn up and how they'll recruit. And so if you like, we have one permanent one who works at the state all the time, and she's already worked out a communications campaign that goes a year in advance. So we know where our immediate communications are coming from, and then through EAUC, the Environmental Association of Universities and Colleges, we tend to throw in other information about the sector or what other universities are doing. We put jobs there. We create quite a lot of interest in why you'd want to be on Green at CU, beyond just some environmental messages, but about a sort of culture and environment. So my final point is what I've learned about dashboards, games, meters, is there isn't a single thing I could say, or people like Richard and Rob can say, that will help you achieve all this in your institution. It's a continuous process with continuous adjustments to the culture you have, the people you have, and communicating and communicating and communicating. But it is worth it. I have to say, it's a project that once you're involving, in this instance, students, somehow it just becomes alive and is a very worthwhile activity. So that's me, and I'll come back to Emma and Rob. Thank you.
I'd struck by the legacy of this work, and it's always nice to hear that. Sometimes we just funding, we fund activities and institutions, and then pressure stuff, and then we move on. But it's good to hear the work that started, continuing to work through. I'm just going to go back and move that forward. Before we throw certain questions, I just wanted to just highlight the fact that this is the first of a series of webinars. I imagine you'll get emails from Emma saying that, can you hear me? Is that better? Sorry. Oh. Ah. Is that better? Can you hear me better now? Okay, that's better. Good. Okay. So this is the first of a series of webinars. This is the schedule going through into early next year. The reducing energy costs guide has been already. I actually realized, having put these links into the PowerPoint, of course you can't click on them. So I will send to Emma the links. The links to webinars are simply links to the things on the Exchange website, but the links to guides I will send to Emma to send out in the post webinar email. So I think, and the final thing just to say is these are my details and various ways you can get involved. We have a mailing list which is very low traffic, mostly used for announcements and things. There is a blog which occasionally gets something added to it. Of course, it's just our friends in the Sustainability Exchange, and I put the links into some of the projects, and you can get to the rest of the Greening ICT program, the projects and their sort of reports and stuff if you're interested in some of the detail. So I think it's time for if there's any questions.
Yes, hi. Thanks for that, everyone. As I've just popped in the chat box, if anyone does have any questions, now is the time to come forward. If you would like to ask aloud any questions, just let me know. Just drop me a little message in the chat box, and I will unmute your microphone. So if anyone does, now is the time to say.
I think, as I said, I think we've got some people from Holland, possibly. Berend, is that Berend? Did you say, or there's if you are from another country, would you be able to say a little bit about if you've got similar initiatives and stuff going on in your domain? People, or was that you?
No, that was me. That was Emma. If you would like me to unmute you, just let me know, or in response to Rob, then you can unmute yourself. I'm sure Rob, Richard, or Elise wouldn't mind if anyone was going to ask them any questions to pop them in an email, or you can email me, and hopefully we can get back to you. Rob, were there any final thoughts?
I suppose I'd be quite interested to know if people find that a useful exercise.
Yeah, we do.
Is the format sort of thing that's useful?
We do have a comment here from Berend. It says, yes, I am here. I think there is also someone from Surf Online who knows more about the university programs.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that anyone's going to come forward, but that's absolutely fine. Thank you very much to everyone today for taking part in this exchange webinar. I'll send an email around to everyone with survey and also all the links and the link to view this exchange webinar and pass it on again. So brilliant. So once again, thank you, Rob, Richard, and Elise.
You're very welcome, and thank you for the efficiency with which you hosted this, Emma. It's been, it's made actually delivering the content really painless.
Oh, thank you.